My grandson's fingers trembled when he wrapped his arms around me at my 68th birthday party. Grandma Ethan whispered, his breath warm against my ear, "Don't trust Dad." Before I could ask what he meant, my son Brandon appeared behind him and tightened one hand around the boy's shoulder. "Go sit with your mother," he said, smiling without warmth. Minutes later, Brandon raised his glass and announced that I would soon be leaving my home to live with his family because I was no longer safe alone. The room erupted in applause. I froze. I had never agreed to move anywhere. And across the table, Ethan stared at me with terror in his eyes. Before I tell you what my grandson had discovered, please like this video and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, would you confront Brandon immediately or pretend you knew nothing and share where you're watching from and what time it is there? For 3 years after my husband Charles died, Brandon was the person I trusted most. Charles and I had been married for 41 years. We bought our 2-story brick house in Columbus when Brandon was still learning to walk. Every room carried a piece of our life together. The faint scratch near the kitchen doorway came from the day Brandon raced his bicycle through the house. The uneven shelf in the living room was something Charles had built himself, though he never admitted it leaned slightly to the left. After Charles passed away, the house became painfully quiet. At first, I could barely sit at the breakfast table without looking toward his empty chair. I still made 2 cups of coffee some mornings. I would realize my mistake only after placing both mugs on the table. Brandon started visiting almost every weekend. He fixed the dripping faucet in the guest bathroom. He replaced a broken porch light. When the furnace made a strange rattling sound, he arrived before I had even finished explaining the problem over the phone. "You shouldn't have to worry about these things, Mom," he often told me. "That's what I'm here for." Those words comforted me. Brandon owned a small construction and home renovation company. He had always been good with his hands, just like Charles. I was proud whenever he talked about new clients' expensive projects or plans to expand his business. He seemed successful. He drove a polished black SUV, wore tailored jackets, and always picked up the check when we ate together. Whenever I asked how his company was doing, he smiled and said business had never been better. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Gradually, Brandon began helping with more than household repairs. He set up automatic payments for my electricity, water, and insurance bills. He showed me how to check my bank balance online, although he usually took the laptop from my hands before I could finish. "These websites are confusing on purpose," he said with a laugh. "Just call me when you need something." One afternoon, he asked for the password to my email account. "It's only for emergencies," he explained. "Suppose you're in the hospital and I need to find an insurance document." I hesitated. Charles had always warned me never to share passwords even with family, but Brandon looked hurt by my silence. "I'm your son, Mom." The disappointment in his voice made me feel foolish for doubting him. I wrote the password on a small piece of paper. Not long after that, he asked where I kept my house documents and insurance policies. He said every family should have an emergency plan. I told him the most important documents were locked in my bedroom drawer, though I did not show him the key. At the time, his questions seemed responsible. Looking back, I understood that every answer I gave him was another door I quietly opened. Brandon also started pointing out things he claimed I had forgotten. Once he called and asked why I had missed a dental appointment. "I didn't have an appointment today," I said. "Yes, you did. Natalie told me it was written on your calendar." I checked the calendar hanging beside the refrigerator. Nothing was written there. Brandon sighed. "Mom, maybe you erased it without remembering." Another time he said I had left the back door unlocked overnight. I checked it before bed, I insisted. "I found it open when I came by this morning." He had a key, so I could not prove whether the door had truly been unlocked. Then there was the stove. During Sunday dinner, Brandon casually told Natalie that I had forgotten to turn off a burner the previous week. I nearly dropped my fork. "When did that happen?" "You called me because the kitchen smelled strange." "I never called you about that." Brandon exchanged a worried look with Natalie. "It's okay, Mom. You probably don't remember." The way he said it made the table go silent. Natalie lowered her eyes. Ethan stopped eating and stared at his plate. I laughed because I did not know what else to do. "Everyone forgets things sometimes." Brandon reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Of course, I'm only worried because I love you." That sentence ended every disagreement. Because I love you. It was difficult to argue with love. By the time of my 68th birthday party, Brandon had repeated enough stories about my forgetfulness that even I had begun questioning myself. I started writing notes about small things. I checked the stove twice before leaving the kitchen. Sometimes I photographed the locked back door before going upstairs. I told myself I was simply being careful. But after Ethan's warning at the party, all those memories felt different. The next morning, Brandon arrived at my house with Natalie and Ethan. I had barely finished breakfast when his SUV pulled into the driveway. He walked in without knocking because he still had the spare key I had given him after Charles died. "Good morning, birthday girl," he called cheerfully. I watched him step into my living room as if nothing unusual had happened. Natalie followed quietly carrying a bakery box. Ethan came in last. His eyes immediately found mine, but Brandon placed a hand on his shoulder before he could approach me. "We brought you some leftover cake," Natalie said. Her smile looked tired. "Thank you," I replied. Brandon sat in Charles's old chair. I disliked seeing him there, though I had never told him so. He leaned forward and rested his elbows on his knees. I wanted to talk about last night. So did I. His expression changed slightly. I sat across from him. "Why did you announce that I was moving into your home?" Brandon blinked as if the question surprised him. "Mom, it was supposed to be good news." Good news for whom Natalie shifted uncomfortably beside him. Brandon gave a small laugh. "For everyone. We've been discussing this for months." "No, Brandon. You have been discussing it." "I have not." His smile disappeared. "We're worried about you living here alone. I have lived here alone for 3 years. And things are changing." "What things?" He glanced toward Natalie, but she looked down at her hands. "You've been forgetting appointments. You leave doors unlocked. There was the issue with the stove." I felt a familiar wave of uncertainty, but this time I did not allow it to silence me. "All of those stories came from you," I said. Brandon frowned. "What is that supposed to mean? It means I don't remember any of them happening." "That is exactly the problem." The words landed harder than he probably intended. Ethan looked up sharply. I turned toward Natalie. "Do you believe I can't live alone?" Her lips parted, but before she could answer, Brandon spoke. "Natalie worries about you just as much as I do." I asked Natalie. Silence filled the room. Natalie finally whispered, "We just want you to be safe." It was not an answer. Brandon stood and walked toward the fireplace mantel where a framed photograph of Charles and me rested. "We converted the downstairs office into a bedroom for you," he said. "There's a bathroom nearby. You won't have to use stairs. You already converted a room. We wanted it ready." Before I agreed, his jaw tightened. "Why are you making this difficult?" I stared at my son. I had seen that expression before, but never directed at me. It was not concern. It was frustration, the frustration of a man whose plan was not unfolding quickly enough. Ethan moved toward me. "Grandma, can I show you something?" Brandon immediately turned around. "Ethan, go help your mother in the kitchen." "But now." The boy lowered his head and walked away. I watched Brandon follow him with his eyes until Ethan disappeared through the doorway. That was the moment I understood something important. My son was not simply worried about me. He was afraid of what his own child might tell me. Brandon turned back with his pleasant smile restored. "Think about the move, Mom. You'll see that it's the best decision." I nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." Relief flashed across his face. He mistook my calmness for surrender. But after he left, I wrote down every word he had said. Then I wrote down every incident he claimed I had forgotten. There were 6 in total. Not one had been witnessed by anyone except Brandon. And for the first time in my life, I locked the door behind my son and checked the window until I saw his SUV disappear from the street. The morning after Brandon's visit, I woke before sunrise. For several minutes, I remained in bed listening to the silence. The house had always felt peaceful in the early morning. That day, it felt watchful. I kept thinking about Ethan, his frightened eyes, his shaking fingers, the way Brandon had placed a hand on his shoulder whenever the boy tried to come near me. "Don't trust Dad." Those 4 words had changed the shape of every memory I carried. I went downstairs, made coffee, and opened the notebook where I had written down Brandon's accusations, the missed dental appointment, the unlocked door, the stove burner, 3 other incidents he had mentioned over the previous year. I studied the list carefully. None of the stories had independent witnesses. Each one had been described to me after the supposed event. Each one ended with Brandon telling me I had forgotten something. And every time I questioned him, he used my confusion as proof that he was right. I drew a line beneath the list and wrote one sentence. What does Brandon want me to believe about myself? The answer frightened me. He wanted me to believe I could no longer trust my own mind. I closed the notebook and decided to begin checking the documents in my bedroom. If Brandon had been gaining access to my accounts, I needed to know exactly what he could see. The locked drawer beneath my dresser contained my insurance policy's property deed tax records, Charles's death certificate, and several investment statements. I had kept everything organized in labeled envelopes because Charles believed important papers should always be easy to find. "Confusion costs money," he used to say. I unlocked the drawer and began placing each envelope on the bed. Home insurance, property taxes, retirement account, life insurance. Then I reached for the thick, cream-colored envelope containing the original deed to the house and the latest mortgage release document. It was gone. At first, I assumed I had overlooked it. I removed every file from the drawer and checked again. Then I searched the closet shelf, the metal filing cabinet in the guest room, and the desk in the downstairs study. Nothing. My heart began beating faster. The missing envelope was important because it proved that Charles and I had paid off the house 7 years earlier. There was no mortgage. No bank had a claim to the property. I remembered showing the document to Brandon once after Charles died. He had asked whether the house was fully paid for, saying he needed the information for my emergency financial plan. I had told him yes. At the time, he congratulated me. Now I wondered why he had needed to know. I called him just after 9. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Morning, Mom. Everything okay? I'm looking for an envelope." There was a brief pause. "What kind of envelope?" "A cream-colored one from the locked drawer in my bedroom." Another pause, slightly longer this time. "The one with the deed and mortgage release." My fingers tightened around the phone. I had not told him what was inside. "Yes," I said carefully. "That one." "Oh, I thought that might be the envelope you meant. How you've mentioned it before." "No, I haven't." "Mom, you showed it to me after Dad died. I showed you the mortgage release. I never described the envelope." Brandon laughed softly. "Does it matter? You probably moved it somewhere. Did you take it?" His tone changed immediately. "Why would I take your documents? I'm asking a simple question, and I'm answering it." "No." I heard voices in the background, then the sound of a door closing. "Are you at work?" I asked. "Yes." "Then I won't keep you." "Wait," he said. "Don't start tearing the house apart. You get overwhelmed when you can't find something." I stared at the empty space inside the drawer. "I am not overwhelmed. I didn't say you were. You just did." He released a slow breath. "Mom, this is exactly what worries me. You lose something, panic, and then accuse people. I asked whether you had it. You accused me." His voice had become sharper. I almost apologized. That was my habit with Brandon. Whenever he became offended, I rushed to calm him. But Ethan's warning stopped me. "I'll keep looking," I said. Before I ended the call, Brandon added, "You should let me organize those papers. Important documents shouldn't be scattered around." The call disconnected. I remained motionless for several seconds. He had known exactly which envelope was missing. That could have meant nothing. Or it could have meant everything. I spent the next 2 hours searching the house. I checked places I would never have used: kitchen cabinets, coat pockets, the linen closet, even the drawer beneath the oven. The envelope was not there. Around noon, I heard a light knock at the back door. When I opened it, Ethan stood on the porch holding a blue backpack. "Grandma." I looked past him toward the driveway. No car. "Where are your parents?" "Mom dropped me at school, but I told the office I felt sick. They called Aunt Melissa to pick me up. She lives 2 streets away." I did not have a sister named Melissa, and Ethan had no aunt living nearby. The lie was clumsy. "How did you get here?" He swallowed. "I walked." My stomach tightened. "You left school?" He nodded. "Does anyone know where you are?" "No." "Ethan, your parents must be terrified. Please don't call Dad yet." His voice cracked. I stepped aside and let him enter. He placed his backpack on the kitchen floor and sat at the table, breathing quickly. I poured him a glass of water, but his hands shook so badly that he spilled some on the table. "Tell me what is happening," I said. He looked toward the windows. "Are the doors locked?" "Yes. Did Dad put cameras here?" The question chilled me. "I don't think so. You have to check." Why? Ethan reached inside his backpack and removed a folded piece of notebook paper. "I couldn't tell you at the party." Dad kept watching me. He pushed the paper toward me. 3 words were written in pencil. "Check Grandpa's desk." I looked at him. What am I supposed to find? I don't know exactly. "Then why did you write this?" Ethan wiped his palms against his jeans. "Dad was in your study last month. He thought I was outside with Mom, but I came inside because I forgot my headphones." "What was he doing?" He pulled one of the drawers all the way out. Then he reached behind it. My mind immediately returned to Charles's old wooden desk in the downstairs study. Brandon had used that room several times during his visits, usually claiming he needed a quiet place to answer business calls. Did he take something? I saw papers. And a small black box. What kind of papers? I couldn't read them. "Did he see you?" Ethan nodded. He grabbed my arm and asked how long I had been standing there. The color drained from his face as he spoke. "What did you tell him?" I said I had just come in. "Did he believe you? I don't know." I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. "Why are you afraid of your father?" Ethan stared at our hands. "He gets angry when people ruin his plans. Has he hurt you?" "Not like hitting me." His answer did not comfort me. "What does that mean?" "He says things. He tells me Mom will leave if I cause trouble. He says our family could lose everything because I don't know when to stay quiet." A wave of anger rose inside me so quickly that I had to steady my breathing. What plan does he think you might ruin? Ethan looked up. The plan for your house. Before I could ask another question, a vehicle pulled into my driveway. Ethan turned toward the window and froze. A black SUV stopped near the porch. Brandon stepped out. How did he find me? Ethan whispered. I looked at the phone in his backpack. Does your father track your phone? His eyes widened. I don't know. Brandon walked toward the house with fast, controlled steps. I folded Ethan's note and slipped it into my pocket. Go upstairs, I said. Grandma. Now, use the guest room and lock the door. Ethan ran from the kitchen just as Brandon knocked. Not gently, 3 hard strikes against the wood. When I opened the door, my son's face was pale with fury. Where is he who don't do this, Mom? He stepped forward, but I blocked the doorway. Ethan left school. His phone says he's here. So Brandon was tracking him. He came because he was frightened. He came because he is 11 and makes reckless decisions. What frightened him, Brandon's eyes shifted past me into the house. Let me in. No. For a moment, neither of us moved. I had never refused my son entry before. His expression hardened. This isn't safe, Mom. For whom? His gaze returned to mine. Then he smiled. It was the same controlled smile he used when other people were watching. You're confused. Ethan is confused. Let me handle my child. He says you were searching Charles's desk. The smile vanished. Only for a second. But I saw it. I used the desk to make a phone call. He says you removed a drawer and reached behind it. Brandon's face became completely still. Then he leaned closer. Children imagine things. Did you take the envelope from my bedroom? His eyes narrowed. I already answered that. Then why did you know exactly which envelope I meant? Behind me, a floorboard creaked upstairs. Brandon looked toward the sound. Ethan, he shouted. Come down here right now. I did not move aside. My son stared at me with an expression I no longer recognized. Mom, he said quietly, you are making a serious mistake. Perhaps I was. But for the first time, I was certain the mistake was not doubting him. It had been trusting him for so long. Brandon stood on my front porch with his jaw clenched, waiting for me to move aside. I didn't. For several long seconds, neither of us spoke. The neighborhood was unusually quiet. Somewhere down the street, a lawnmower hummed in the distance. A dog barked twice before everything fell silent again. Finally, Brandon forced a smile. Mom, you're upsetting Ethan. I'm protecting him. You think I'm a danger to my own son? I think he's afraid of you. His smile disappeared. Children become afraid when adults fill their heads with nonsense. I haven't filled his head with anything. No. He folded his arms. Then why is he hiding upstairs? Because he doesn't want you to find him, I thought. Instead, I answered calmly. He needed somewhere safe. Brandon looked directly into my eyes. He belongs with his parents. I'll call Natalie. I already have. His response came too quickly. She's on her way. Something about his tone bothered me. It wasn't concern. It sounded like control. I'll wait until she gets here, I said. Brandon sighed dramatically. Mom, please stop making everything more difficult than it has to be. The sentence struck me. More difficult. Not more dangerous. Not more emotional. Just more difficult. As though I had become an obstacle instead of his mother. I folded my arms. I'm staying here. So am I. Neither of us moved. Nearly 15 minutes passed before another vehicle entered the driveway. Natalie's silver sedan. She climbed out quickly, looking exhausted. The moment she saw Brandon standing outside my front door, her shoulders dropped ever so slightly as if she had expected this exact scene. Where's Ethan? She asked. Upstairs, I answered. She nodded once. I'm going to get him. Brandon immediately stepped toward her. No. Natalie stopped walking. He needs to come with us. I'll bring him. Their eyes met. For the first time, I noticed something I had overlooked for years. Natalie wasn't looking at her husband with love. She was measuring him, carefully, almost cautiously. I'll get him, she repeated. Brandon's jaw tightened. I said I'll do it. No. The single word surprised all three of us. Natalie rarely contradicted him. She walked past him before he could react and disappeared inside the house. Brandon started after her. I stepped into his path. You've done enough. His eyes flashed with anger. You don't know what's happening. Then explain it. I can't explain everything standing on your porch. Try. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then shook his head. I don't have time. That answer told me everything. A truthful explanation does not require perfect timing. Several minutes later, Natalie returned with Ethan beside her. He walked directly toward his mother, not toward Brandon. That small choice did not escape me. Natalie placed one arm around Ethan. "We're going home." Ethan looked at me. "I'm sorry. You have nothing to apologize for." Brandon opened the passenger door of the SUV. "No," Natalie spoke firmly. "We're taking my car." He stared at her. "What?" I said. "Ethan and I are taking my car. We came together. We're leaving separately." The silence between them felt heavy. Finally, Brandon gave a short nod. "Fine." He walked back towards his SUV without another word. But before getting inside, he looked directly at me. "You'll regret listening to an 11-year-old instead of your own son." Then he drove away. I watched until the black SUV disappeared around the corner. Natalie hesitated before getting into her own car. She lowered the window. "I'm sorry." "For what?" She looked toward the road Brandon had taken. "I wish things were different." Before I could ask what she meant, she drove away. The house felt strangely empty afterward. I locked every door, closed every curtain. Then I took Ethan's note from my pocket. "Check Grandpa's desk." I carried it downstairs into Charles's old study. The room had remained almost untouched since his death. His favorite leather chair still faced the window. His reading glasses rested on the corner of the desk exactly where he had left them after finishing the newspaper on his final morning. Dust covered several bookshelves. I had cleaned the room regularly, but I never moved anything that belonged to Charles. It made me feel as though he had simply stepped outside for a moment. I stood before the large oak desk. Charles bought it nearly 30 years earlier from an antique dealer. "It's built better than anything made today," he used to say proudly. I opened every drawer, pens, receipts, old Christmas cards, warranty manuals, nothing unusual. Then I remembered Ethan's words. Dad pulled one of the drawers all the way out. I chose the largest bottom drawer and slowly slid it completely free. It was heavier than I expected. Behind it, nothing. Just the wooden frame. I frowned. Perhaps Ethan had remembered incorrectly. I replaced the drawer, then removed another. Still nothing. The third drawer, nothing. I sat back on my heels disappointed. Maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe Brandon really had only been searching for something ordinary. I stood up. As I reached to replace the final drawer, my fingers brushed against an uneven section beneath the desktop. I stopped. The wood felt different. Smooth, almost polished. I leaned down. There was a tiny recessed groove hidden beneath the desk, so small I had never noticed it. I slid my finger inside. Click. A faint mechanical sound echoed through the desk. My heart nearly stopped. A narrow wooden panel quietly shifted backward inside the frame, a hidden compartment. I stared in disbelief. Charles! How many years had we owned this desk? 30, and I had never known. Inside rested a small black metal lockbox, exactly as Ethan had described. Beside it lay a sealed envelope. My hands trembled as I lifted the envelope. Across the front, written in Charles's unmistakable handwriting, were 5 words. "For Alicia, if necessary." Tears instantly filled my eyes. Charles had written this before he died. I carefully broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. "My dearest Alicia, if you are reading this, something has happened that made you search where I hoped you never would. I pray I'm wrong. But if I'm right, someone you trusted is trying to convince you not to trust yourself. Never surrender your judgment because another person insists your memory has failed. People can manipulate facts. They can manipulate emotions. But they cannot change the truth." I continued reading, my breathing becoming slower with every line. Charles explained that years before his death, Brandon had quietly asked him for a large loan, not for business expansion, to cover hidden debts. Charles had refused. He had offered financial counseling instead. Brandon became angry. Very angry. Charles wrote that Brandon blamed everyone else for his financial problems and always believed he deserved another chance. Then came the sentence that made my blood run cold. "If Brandon ever pressures you to sign documents you don't fully understand, refuse immediately. I fear desperation may someday outweigh his judgment." I read the sentence 3 times. Charles had seen something years earlier, something he never fully explained. The final page contained another warning. Trust actions more than words. If someone repeatedly tells you that your memory is failing while controlling your money, your documents, or your decisions, seek independent advice immediately. Do not rely on family alone. I lowered the letter onto the desk. My hands were shaking. Charles had predicted something frighteningly close to what was happening. Not exactly, but close enough. Then I turned my attention to the black lockbox. It wasn't locked. Inside were several neatly folded documents, copies of old bank statements, a handwritten timeline, and a flash drive. Before examining them, I heard something outside. A car door. I quickly walked to the study window. Across the street sat a familiar black SUV. Engine off, parked quietly beneath a large maple tree. Brandon remained inside, watching my house. He wasn't making another visit. He wasn't dropping something off. He was simply sitting there, waiting, watching. I slowly stepped away from the window without letting him see me. Charles had been right about one thing. I could no longer rely on assumptions. From that moment forward, every move I made had to remain invisible. Because my son wasn't just trying to convince me I was losing my memory. He was making sure he always knew exactly what I was doing. I waited nearly 40 minutes before Brandon finally drove away. I never moved from the study window. His black SUV remained parked across the street, motionless beneath the maple tree. Every few minutes he glanced toward my house. Once, he even lifted his phone as though taking a photograph. When the vehicle finally disappeared around the corner, I closed the curtains instead of celebrating. Charles had always believed that once trust was broken, caution had to replace it. For the first time, I truly understood what he meant. I returned to the desk and opened the black lockbox again. The flash drive lay beside a stack of neatly organized papers. Charles had labeled everything in his precise handwriting. Business loan request, personal notes, bank records, property information. I decided to leave the flash drive untouched for the moment. Instead, I unfolded the handwritten timeline. The first entry dated back almost 6 years. Brandon requested $180,000 to save his company after losing several commercial contracts. Charles had refused to hand over the money directly. Instead, he offered to meet with Brandon's accountant and review the business finances. According to Charles's notes, Brandon became defensive and canceled the meeting. Several months later came another entry. Brandon requested that Charles co-sign a business loan. Again, Charles refused. Another year passed. A third request appeared. This time, Brandon wanted permission to use my future inheritance as collateral for temporary financing. Charles had underlined one sentence 3 times. Never allow family emotion to replace financial judgment. I closed my eyes. How many times had Charles quietly protected me without ever saying a word? How many arguments had he carried alone because he didn't want me caught between my husband and our son? A lump formed in my throat. There was one final note at the bottom of the page. If Brandon ever begins asking detailed questions about our property savings passwords or legal documents after I'm gone, assume financial pressure. Not family concern is driving those conversations. I remembered every innocent question Brandon had asked after Charles died. Where are the house papers? Who manages your investments? Do you still remember your banking password? Should I keep copies of your documents? One by one, they no longer sounded innocent. They sounded like preparation. I placed the papers back inside the lockbox and reached for my phone. There was only one person I trusted enough to speak with before doing anything else. My best friend, Denise Carter. She answered immediately. Alicia, how are you after your birthday? I need to ask you something. My voice must have sounded strange because her cheerful tone disappeared. What's wrong? Can you meet me somewhere? Somewhere Brandon wouldn't expect. Within an hour, we sat inside a quiet cafe nearly 20 minutes from my neighborhood. Denise listened without interrupting as I described Ethan's warning, the missing envelope, Charles's hidden letter, and Brandon's growing insistence that I was becoming forgetful. When I finished, she leaned back slowly. I've been waiting for you to say this. I stared at her. What do you mean? She hesitated. I didn't know how to bring it up. Bring what up? The last few times I've seen Brandon, she chose her words carefully. He answers questions that are directed at you. I frowned. What? Remember my birthday lunch in March? I searched my memory. We were talking about your vacation. You started telling me about your trip to Arizona with Charles years ago. I nodded. Before you finished, Brandon interrupted and corrected 2 small details. I blinked. I thought he was helping. Denise slowly shook her head. No, Alicia. He wasn't helping. He was teaching everyone to trust his version of events more than yours. The realization sent a chill through me. She continued. And last Christmas, when you couldn't immediately remember the name of that restaurant Charles loved? I smiled sadly. The steakhouse? Exactly. You remembered it 30 seconds later. I nodded. But Brandon announced to everyone that your memory was getting worse. I remembered the laughter around the dinner table. At the time, I had laughed too. Now I wondered whether every small moment had been another brick in a wall Brandon was carefully building around me. Denise reached across the table. You are one of the sharpest women I know. I don't feel sharp anymore. Because someone keeps telling you that you're confused. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then Denise asked quietly, What are you going to do? I need facts. Good. Not feelings. Even better. I need to know whether Brandon has touched any of my accounts. Denise nodded immediately. Then let's go to your bank. Rebecca Morales had managed my local bank branch for nearly 12 years. She remembered Charles. She remembered opening our retirement accounts. Most importantly, she knew us well enough to notice when something felt unusual. She welcomed me into her office with a warm smile. Alicia, it's been too long. I need help reviewing my accounts. Of course. As she pulled up my information, she chatted casually about retirement grandchildren and community events. Then her expression changed. She stopped typing. Alicia, what is it? She turned the monitor slightly away from herself. I need to ask a sensitive question. Go ahead. Have you recently signed any financial authorization forms? My heartbeat quickened. I don't think so. What do you mean by authorization forms? She clicked another screen. There is a durable financial power of attorney on file. The room became completely silent. I stared at her. A what? A durable financial power of attorney. I never signed one. Rebecca looked genuinely uncomfortable. The document authorizes another person to communicate with us regarding certain financial matters. Who? She hesitated only briefly. Your son. The words seemed impossible. No. I'm afraid, no. I never signed that. Rebecca looked carefully at me. Would you like to see the document? Please. She opened a scanned copy. My signature appeared at the bottom. It looked almost exactly like mine. Almost. I leaned closer. At first glance, anyone would believe I had signed it. Then I noticed something. I always wrote the letter A in Alicia with a slight curve at the top because my father had taught me cursive that way when I was 8 years old. This signature had a perfectly straight line. Tiny. Almost invisible. But wrong. That isn't my signature. Rebecca studied it again. You're certain? Absolutely. When was this filed? She checked the record. Approximately 8 months ago. 8 months. Around the same time, Brandon had become obsessed with helping me pay bills. What authority does it give him? Rebecca read carefully. He may request balances. He may discuss account activity. He may obtain certain financial information. He may... She stopped. What? He requested copies of historical statements. When? Rebecca clicked through the activity log. 3 separate times. My stomach tightened. I never knew. There are also notes that he visited this branch twice. I wasn't with him. No. Rebecca looked increasingly concerned. He came alone. I felt suddenly cold. What else? There was one unusual request. What request? He asked whether the mortgage release document for your home was available through our archived records. I stared at her. My home doesn't have a mortgage. I know. Why would he ask? Rebecca slowly closed the file. I can't answer that. But I strongly recommend you speak with an attorney. I nodded. Then another thought struck me. Can he move money? Rebecca shook her head. No. Not with this limited authorization. Relief flooded through me, only briefly. Unless, my heart stopped again. Unless what? If a broader document exists somewhere else. The office suddenly felt much smaller. I thought about the missing envelope, the hidden letter, Charles's warning, Brandon's questions, the forged signature. Everything was beginning to fit together. Rebecca printed copies of every authorization request Brandon had made. Before handing them to me, she lowered her voice. Alicia. Yes, if you truly did not sign this. She paused. Then someone has committed a very serious crime. I carefully placed the papers inside my purse. I think this is only the beginning. As I walked toward the parking lot with Denise beside me, my phone vibrated. One new message. From Brandon. Mom, I heard you went to the bank today. Why didn't you tell me first? I froze. I had told no one except Denise. Neither of us had called Brandon. I slowly looked back toward the bank building. Someone, somehow, had informed my son that I was asking questions. I stared at Brandon's message until the screen dimmed. Mom, I heard you went to the bank today. Why didn't you tell me first? A cold sensation spread through my chest. I hadn't called him. Denise hadn't called him. Rebecca certainly wouldn't have violated bank policy. So how did he know Denise watched my face carefully? What happened? I handed her my phone. She read the message twice before looking up. That was fast. Too fast. We were still standing in the parking lot. Less than 10 minutes had passed since we had left Rebecca's office. Denise scanned the area. Let's get into my car. We climbed inside, locked the doors, and remained silent for several moments. Finally, she spoke. Either Brandon guessed... He didn't. Or someone told him. I nodded. But who? Neither of us had an answer. I replied to Brandon with a single sentence, just checking some paperwork, nothing else. His response arrived almost immediately. You should have waited for me. I'll come by tonight. I didn't answer. Instead, I powered my phone off. Denise raised an eyebrow. Good. If he's watching through your phone somehow, you just made things harder. I don't even know if that's possible. I don't either. But I don't like coincidences. Neither did I. Before returning home, Denise insisted we stop at an electronics store. She purchased a small notebook. Why? No more important conversations on your phone. She handed it to me. From now on, write everything down. Every phone call, every visitor, every strange event, every document. If this becomes legal, she said, details matter. Charles would have approved. I began my first entry before we even left the parking lot. Date, time, bank visit, power of attorney discovered, forged signature suspected. Brandon somehow knew within minutes. It felt strangely comforting to see facts written on paper. Facts couldn't be manipulated as easily as memories. When I arrived home, everything looked normal. Too normal. The flower beds, the porch swing, Charles's wind chime softly moving in the afternoon breeze. Yet I no longer saw my home the same way. Every window made me wonder whether someone had been watching. Every room made me wonder what Brandon had searched while I wasn't paying attention. I locked the front door. Then I walked directly to Charles's study. The lockbox remained exactly where I'd left it. This time I picked up the flash drive. My desktop computer was nearly 8 years old, but it still worked. After several moments, the contents appeared on the screen. Only 3 folders. Business, property, personal. I opened personal first. Inside were scanned family photographs, copies of Will's insurance documents, and several videos Charles had recorded during the final months of his illness. Tears filled my eyes when I saw his face frozen on the screen. Not yet. I wasn't ready. I closed the folder. Next came business. Several spreadsheets, copies of canceled checks, letters between Charles and Brandon. One document immediately caught my attention. Private loan discussion. It summarized 3 meetings between father and son. Charles had written detailed notes after each conversation. Meeting 1. Brandon requested financial assistance. Denied. Meeting 2. Requested access to home equity. Denied. Meeting 3 requested signatures on collateral documents. Denied immediately. At the bottom of the final page, Charles had written one sentence. Brandon appeared unusually desperate today. He repeatedly insisted no one would ever discover the arrangement. My pulse quickened. What arrangement? The document ended there? I searched for another explanation, but found nothing. Then I opened the property folder. Several copies of property tax records appeared, then survey maps, insurance valuations. Finally, house blueprint. I frowned. Charles had scanned the original architectural drawings of our house. Curious, I enlarged the image. Every room appeared exactly as expected. Kitchen, living room, garage, basement, study. Wait, basement. I frowned again. Our house didn't have a basement. Or at least, I had always believed it didn't. I enlarged the blueprint further. Beneath the study appeared a rectangular storage room accessible by a staircase hidden behind the bookshelf. I stared at the drawing. No, that couldn't be right. I had lived in this house for 38 years. There was no hidden staircase. Was there? I hurried downstairs. The study looked exactly as it always had. Large bookshelf, desk, leather chair. Nothing unusual. Still, Charles had never drawn imaginary rooms. I walked toward the bookshelf. It stretched nearly from floor to ceiling, filled with history books, law books, old engineering manuals. I ran my fingers along both sides. Nothing. Then across the bottom shelf. Nothing. I almost laughed at myself. Perhaps the blueprint belonged to an earlier renovation that had never happened. Just as I turned away, my hand brushed against a carved wooden ornament shaped like an oak leaf. It moved. Barely. Click. The bookshelf shifted forward less than an inch. My breath caught. Slowly. Almost silently. The entire bookshelf swung outward. Behind it stood a narrow staircase descending into darkness. I switched on my phone's flashlight. The beam revealed concrete steps, dust, a metal handrail. No footprints except recent ones. Someone had been down there. Recently. The dust had been disturbed. My heart pounded. I descended carefully. At the bottom stood a small room, perhaps 12 feet wide. Shelves lined one wall. Old paint cans. Boxes. Holiday decorations. Nothing remarkable. Until I noticed a modern metal filing cabinet. It didn't belong. Everything else in the room looked decades old. The cabinet looked almost new. Its top drawer wasn't locked. Inside rested neatly organized folders: property, insurance, medical, legal. Someone had been using this room. Recently. I opened the legal folder, several photocopies, court forms, medical evaluations. Then, guardianship information packet. My hands froze. Across the front page, someone had highlighted several paragraphs describing how an elderly adult could be declared legally incapable of managing personal affairs. I turned another page, highlighted again: financial incapacity, cognitive decline, appointment of guardian, removal of financial authority. Every highlighted sentence described me, or rather, the version of me Brandon had been slowly creating. Another folder contained brochures from assisted living facilities. Another held advertisements for memory care centers. One page listed estimated monthly costs. Someone had circled the least expensive option. I could barely breathe. This wasn't preparation for helping me. This was preparation for replacing me. Then I heard footsteps above. Soft, slow, moving across the study floor. Someone had entered the house. I immediately switched off my flashlight. Darkness swallowed the room. The footsteps stopped. Then I heard a familiar voice upstairs. "Mom." Brandon. I hadn't told him to come. My phone was still turned off. How did he know I was home? I remained perfectly still beneath the floor. Above me, Brandon continued walking through the study. Drawers opened, closed, a chair scraped across the floor. He was searching for something. Very quietly, I looked around the hidden room. Beside the filing cabinet stood a cardboard box. Inside it lay several electronic devices: an old tablet, 2 external hard drives, and a small digital voice recorder. None of them belonged to Charles. I slipped the voice recorder into my pocket just as footsteps sounded directly above my head. Then Brandon spoke again, almost whispering. "It has to be here." I stood perfectly still in the darkness beneath my own house. Above me, Brandon continued searching through Charles's study. Every sound echoed through the hidden room: a drawer sliding open, books being pulled from shelves, cabinet doors closing. Then his voice drifted through the floorboards. "It has to be here." He wasn't looking for me. He was looking for something else, something important enough to enter my house without permission. I slowly tightened my grip on the small digital voice recorder in my pocket. The device felt surprisingly heavy. I didn't dare switch it on. Not yet. The hidden room remained completely dark except for the faint light leaking beneath the edge of the concealed staircase. Several long minutes passed. Finally, I heard Brandon's footsteps moving toward the front of the house. A door opened, closed. Silence returned. I waited another 10 minutes before climbing the stairs. When I carefully pushed the hidden bookshelf open, the study looked exactly as I had left it, except it wasn't. The drawers of Charles's desk were half open. Several books had been moved. One picture frame had been turned slightly sideways. Brandon had searched the room quickly but carelessly. I locked the front door immediately. Then I checked every window. Only after I was certain the house was empty did I return to the hidden room. This time I examined everything carefully. The digital voice recorder appeared almost new. Its battery indicators still showed nearly full power. Beside it lay an older tablet protected by a black case. Unlike the recorder, the tablet required a password. The external hard drives were labeled only with dates. I decided not to touch them until I understood more. Instead, I switched on the voice recorder. The device contained dozens of saved recordings. Some were only a few seconds long. Others lasted more than an hour. The file names weren't descriptive, just dates. I selected one recorded approximately 9 months earlier. Static filled the speaker. Then, Brandon's voice. "She doesn't remember exactly when Charles organized the paperwork." Another voice answered. Female, Natalie. "I don't like this. We've discussed it already. This feels wrong." "It isn't wrong." "She's your mother." A long silence followed. Then Brandon spoke again. "If everyone believes she's becoming forgetful, the transition will be much easier." My heart nearly stopped. I paused the recording. My hands were shaking so violently that I almost dropped the recorder. Charles had been right. Brandon hadn't simply noticed memory problems. He had been creating them. At least, creating the appearance of them. I forced myself to continue listening. Natalie's voice sounded uncertain. "What if she notices?" "She won't." "How can you be sure?" "Because every time she questions herself, she asks me what happened." He laughed quietly. "And I tell her." The recording ended. I stared at the small machine in disbelief. One recording, one conversation, yet it completely changed everything. I wasn't imagining the pattern. It was deliberate. Very deliberate. I searched through the remaining files. Another recording. Different date. This time, Brandon was speaking with someone else. Male, unknown. The guardianship process takes time. I know. You need documentation. I'm working on it. Medical evaluations. Already planned. Witnesses. I'll have those too. The unknown man lowered his voice. Just don't move too quickly. I won't. I need the house legally under my control before anyone starts asking questions. The recording ended abruptly. I sat motionless. Guardianship. Control. The house. Everything Charles feared. Everything Ethan warned me about. Every piece now pointed in the same direction. But I still didn't know who the other man was. I placed the recorder carefully inside my purse. The tablet remained locked. The hard drives remained unopened. I needed professional help before digging deeper. The following morning, Denise arrived just after 8. She listened to both recordings without interrupting. When the second file ended, she slowly removed her glasses. Alicia? I know. No. She shook her head. I don't think you do. What do you mean? This isn't just family conflict anymore. She pointed toward the recorder. This is evidence. Real evidence. Not suspicions. Not feelings. Evidence. We need a lawyer, she said. I agree. Not Brandon's lawyer. Obviously. Someone who specializes in elder financial abuse. The phrase sounded strange. Elder financial abuse? I had heard it on television before. I never imagined it could describe my own life. Denise opened her laptop. After nearly 20 minutes of searching, she found an attorney recommended by several local senior advocacy organizations. Jonathan Reed, specialized in elder law, estate protection, financial exploitation. His office agreed to see me that afternoon. Jonathan Reed was younger than I expected, perhaps in his early 50s, calm, professional. He listened far more than he spoke. For nearly an hour, I explained everything from Ethan's warning to Charles's hidden letter. I handed him copies of the bank documents, then the recordings. He listened twice. When the room finally became quiet, he folded his hands. Mrs. Owens, I know this sounds unbelievable. No, he looked directly at me. Unfortunately, it doesn't. I blinked. You've seen this before, several times. The answer made my stomach sink. He leaned slightly forward. Family financial exploitation often begins exactly the way you've described. With small acts, gradual dependence, questions about passwords, managing bills, creating the appearance of cognitive decline. Every sentence matched my experience. Jonathan opened a legal pad. There are several issues. He began writing. Possible forgery, unauthorized financial access, potential guardianship planning, possible fraud. He paused. And one more. What? If your son truly intends to pursue guardianship, we need independent medical evidence immediately. You mean memory testing? Exactly. If someone later claims you're mentally incompetent, we want objective evaluations completed before legal action begins. The idea made perfect sense. I'll do it. Good. He continued. Second, he held up the forged power of attorney. This document must be revoked immediately, whether genuine or not. I never signed it. I believe you, but legally belief isn't enough. We'll challenge it properly. I nodded. What about the recordings? Jonathan looked thoughtful. They're valuable, but don't reveal them. Why not? Because your son doesn't know you have them. He smiled slightly. That gives us an advantage. For the first time in days, I felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Jonathan continued outlining the plan. Independent medical evaluation, immediate revocation of any financial authorization, property records review, digital forensic examination of the recordings, secure every original document. Then he asked one final question. Mrs. Owens, yes. Besides your grandson, is there anyone inside Brandon's household who may eventually tell the truth? I immediately thought of Natalie, her hesitation, her apology, the fear in her eyes. I don't know. Jonathan nodded. Someone usually does. As Denise and I prepared to leave, Jonathan handed me a new folder. Across the front, he had written one sentence in large black letters. Do not sign anything. I smiled faintly. I don't intend to. He smiled back. Good. Then his expression became serious once more. Because once Brandon realizes he's losing control, he will almost certainly become more dangerous. I carried the folder tightly against my chest as we walked toward the parking lot. Just before reaching Denise's car, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. A quiet female voice whispered only 6 words before hanging up. "Don't trust the hidden tablet." Then the line went dead. I remained frozen beside Denise's car, my phone still pressed against my ear long after the call had ended. 6 words. Don't trust the hidden tablet. Nothing more. No greeting. No explanation. No name. Denise watched my expression change. What happened? I lowered the phone slowly. Someone just warned me about the tablet. The one from the hidden room? I nodded. They said not to trust it. Denise frowned. Did you recognize the voice? I closed my eyes and replayed the brief sentence in my mind. Soft, female, calm but nervous. No. You've never heard it before. I'm not sure. The uncertainty frustrated me. The voice sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. Jonathan stepped out of his office building just as we were about to leave. He noticed us standing beside the car and walked over. Everything all right? I told him about the phone call. He listened carefully without interrupting. When I finished, he folded his arms. There are 2 possibilities. I'm listening. Either someone is trying to help you, or someone wants to mislead you. How do we know which? We don't. He looked directly at me. So we treat the tablet as evidence, not truth. He explained that digital devices could contain altered files, misleading documents, or even software designed to create false timelines. If Brandon expected someone to eventually find that room, he may have left something behind intentionally. That possibility had never occurred to me. So I shouldn't open it. You shouldn't trust anything on it until it's examined properly. I nodded. The anonymous caller had said exactly the same thing. Jonathan continued. Bring both the tablet and the hard drives to a certified forensic examiner. What about the voice recorder? Keep it with you. It's currently your strongest evidence. As Denise and I drove away, neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, she asked, Who do you think called? I stared out the passenger window. I keep thinking about Natalie. You think it was her? I don't know. But she's the only person who's acted like she wanted to say something. Denise nodded slowly. Maybe. But let's not assume. She was right. Assumptions had nearly destroyed my confidence once already. Now I needed facts. Only facts. The following morning, I kept my appointment with Dr. Susan Whitmore, the neurologist Jonathan had recommended. Walking into the clinic felt strangely humiliating. Not because I believed I was losing my memory, but because someone had almost convinced me that I was. Dr. Whitmore greeted me warmly. I've already spoken briefly with Mr. Reed. I understand. He asked that we perform a complete cognitive evaluation. For legal reasons? For medical reasons first. She smiled kindly. And legal reasons second. The evaluation lasted nearly 3 hours. Memory exercises, problem-solving tasks, language tests, attention assessments, mathematical reasoning, pattern recognition, questions about dates, current events, and personal history. By the end, my head ached. Dr. Whitmore reviewed the preliminary results while I waited quietly across from her desk. Finally, she looked up. Mrs. Owens. I held my breath. Your cognitive performance is excellent. I blinked. In fact, she smiled. It's well above average for your age. I laughed softly, not because anything was funny, because the relief was almost overwhelming. So, I see no evidence of dementia. No significant cognitive impairment. No indication that you are incapable of managing your affairs. She printed several pages. I'll prepare a formal report. Jonathan had insisted on independent documentation before Brandon could file anything. Now we had it. As I prepared to leave, Dr. Whitmore asked one unexpected question. Has anyone repeatedly told you that you're becoming forgetful? Yes. For how long? Nearly 2 years. She sighed quietly. I've seen patients become genuinely anxious after prolonged psychological manipulation. I looked at her. Manipulation? Yes. When trusted family members constantly question someone's memory, perfectly healthy people begin doubting themselves. She paused. It can be devastating. Those words stayed with me the entire drive home. Devastating. That was exactly what it had felt like. That afternoon, Jonathan arranged for a certified forensic specialist to examine the hidden tablet. I handed it over without opening it. The specialist smiled. You did the right thing. Why? He held up the device. Most people can't resist looking. You think someone wanted me to? We'll know soon enough. He promised preliminary findings within 48 hours. Now there was nothing to do except wait. The waiting ended sooner than expected. At 7 o'clock that evening, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw Natalie. Alone. She looked exhausted. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. When I opened the door, she immediately looked over her shoulder toward the street. "Can I come in?" "Of course." The moment she entered, she whispered, "Please lock the door." I did. She remained standing in the hallway, twisting her wedding ring nervously. "Does Brandon know you're here?" "No." "Where is he?" "Business dinner." I noticed the hesitation before she answered. Perhaps it wasn't entirely true. I led her into the living room. Neither of us sat down immediately. Finally, she spoke. "I'm sorry. You've already apologized once." "I know. This time." Tears filled her eyes. "I mean it." I remained silent. She slowly lowered herself onto the sofa. "I should have stopped this months ago." My heartbeat quickened. "What exactly should you have stopped?" She buried her face in her hands. He convinced himself he was protecting the family. Protecting it from what? Debt. There it was again. Debt. Just as Charles had suspected years earlier. Natalie looked up. "The business wasn't successful." "I thought it was. So did everyone else." She gave a bitter laugh. "He kept borrowing, refinancing, taking larger contracts, losing more money." I remembered the expensive SUV, the tailored suits, the confident smile. It had all been an illusion. "He said if he controlled your house..." She stopped speaking. I waited. "Everything would be fixed." The room fell completely silent. "So he planned this?" Natalie nodded once. "Not at first." "What do you mean? Originally, he only wanted you to move in with us. So he could sell my house." She looked down. "Yes." My chest tightened. "But then, when the debts became worse, he started talking about guardianship." My hands became cold. "He said people would believe you were confused if enough small mistakes accumulated." The words matched the recordings almost perfectly. Natalie reached into her purse. "I brought something." She placed a thick brown envelope on the coffee table. "I copied these before Brandon noticed." "What are they?" "Business records, loan statements, past due notices, private emails." I stared at the envelope. "You've been collecting evidence for weeks." "Why now?" Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. "Because Ethan heard too much." My heart immediately sank. "He knows about the plan. He heard Brandon talking on the phone. With whom? I don't know. But afterward..." Natalie struggled to continue. "Brandon told Ethan that sometimes old people have to lose their freedom for their own good." I closed my eyes. No wonder the boy had been terrified. Natalie slid the envelope closer. "There's something else." "What?" "The business records aren't the worst part." I slowly opened the envelope. Inside were dozens of financial documents. Near the bottom lay a single printed email. The sender's name made my blood run cold. Victor Hale. The very same name Charles had written in his notes years earlier. I looked back at Natalie. "Who is Victor Hale?" She swallowed hard. "The man who promised Brandon he could make your house disappear without anyone asking questions." I stared at the printed email until the words blurred. Victor Hale. The name had been buried in Charles's notes years ago, mentioned only once without explanation. At the time, I assumed Victor was a former client or perhaps a financial advisor. Now the name had returned, this time connected directly to Brandon. I looked up at Natalie. "Who is he?" She hesitated. "I've never met him." "Then how do you know his name?" "Because Brandon talked about him constantly during the last 6 months." She took a deep breath. "He said Victor could fix everything." "What does that mean?" "I don't know exactly. But every time another bill arrived, or another loan payment was overdue, he'd say, 'Victor has a solution.'" I carefully unfolded the printed email. The message was short. Too short. Brandon. "Before moving forward, make sure every document is consistent. The appearance of diminished capacity must come before any transfer discussions. Don't rush. People become suspicious when families move too quickly. Call me after the evaluation. Victor." My hands began trembling. The appearance of diminished capacity. Not actual incapacity. Appearance. Jonathan had been right. Someone had been planning this carefully. I continued reading through the documents. There were overdue business loans totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars. Letters threatening legal action, past due supplier invoices, equipment leases in default. One notice warned that Brandon's company accounts could soon be frozen. The business I believed was thriving had been collapsing for years. I looked at Natalie. "Why didn't you tell me?" She lowered her eyes. "I was afraid." "Of Brandon?" She nodded. "And of losing everything." "Did he know you copied these?" "No." "If he finds out?" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. An hour later, Natalie prepared to leave. Before opening the front door, she turned toward me. Alicia. Yes. Ethan wasn't exaggerating. What do you mean? He really is afraid. He asked me last week whether Grandma would still recognize him after moving away. A sharp pain settled in my chest. What did you tell him? I told him you weren't going anywhere. She looked ashamed. I don't know if he believed me. After she left, I locked every door again. Then I immediately called Jonathan. He answered after the second ring. I think we've identified Victor Hale. I summarized everything Natalie had brought. Jonathan listened quietly. When I finished, he asked only one question. Do you still have the envelope? Yes. Don't make additional copies. Why? Because if these are authentic, they establish planning, not merely opportunity. His tone became noticeably more serious. Alicia, I need you to bring everything to my office first thing tomorrow morning. Everything. The recordings, the emails, the financial statements, the hidden documents, and Charles's letter. I'll be there. Before hanging up, he added, and don't tell anyone where you're going. The next morning, I left home before sunrise. For the first time in years, I deliberately took unfamiliar roads. Perhaps I was becoming overly cautious, or perhaps I was finally learning. When I arrived at Jonathan's office, another man was already waiting. Mrs. Owens? He extended his hand. My name is Daniel Brooks. Jonathan introduced him. Daniel specializes in forensic accounting. Daniel smiled politely. I follow money. For the next 3 hours, we spread every document across a large conference table. Loan notices, emails, business records, bank statements, Charles's notes. Daniel worked almost silently. Occasionally, he circled dates. Sometimes he connected names using colored markers. Finally, he leaned back. I think I know what's happening. Jonathan nodded toward him. Go ahead. Daniel pointed to the oldest loan statement. Brandon's financial problems began years ago. He moved to another document. Then he refinanced. Another. Then refinanced again. Another. Then borrowed privately. He placed his finger on Victor Hale's email. When conventional lenders stopped helping, someone introduced him to Victor. What kind of person is Victor? I asked. Daniel answered carefully. Based on these documents, I'd say someone who specializes in distressed assets. I don't understand. He finds people in financial trouble, and he helps them gain control of valuable property. My house. Daniel nodded. Very likely. Jonathan spoke next. Your home is worth nearly $1 million. I stared at him. I knew property values increased, but not that much. Paid off. No mortgage. No liens. Daniel tapped the table. To someone drowning in debt. Your house looks like a life raft. The realization settled over the room. I hadn't become the target because Brandon hated me. I had become the target because I owned something he desperately needed. As we organized the documents, Jonathan's assistant entered quietly. There's someone here asking for Mrs. Owens. I frowned. I don't have an appointment. The assistant looked uncertain. She says it's urgent. Who is she? Rebecca Morales. The bank manager. Jonathan immediately stood. Bring her in. Rebecca entered looking unusually tense. I'm sorry for coming without calling. What happened? I asked. She looked directly at me. Someone came to the bank this morning. Brandon. She nodded. He requested copies of additional account records. I thought his authorization was limited. It is. So, he became angry when we refused. My pulse quickened. Then what? Rebecca removed a folded incident report. He claimed you were becoming mentally unstable. The room became completely silent. He said you had recently become paranoid, that strangers were manipulating you, and that he feared you might withdraw large amounts of money. Jonathan slowly closed his notebook. Did he request anything else? Rebecca nodded. He asked whether emergency restrictions could be placed on your accounts. I stared at her. Can they? Not without proper legal authority. Relief washed over me. But, she hesitated, if a court later appoints a guardian? Everything changes. Jonathan immediately looked at me. We're running out of time. I know. Rebecca added one final sentence. Before leaving, Brandon said something that bothered me. What? He smiled. And he said, the evaluation should happen soon anyway. Evaluation. The word echoed inside my mind. Jonathan's expression hardened. There it is. What? He already expects a medical evaluation. But mine is finished. Exactly. He looked straight at me. I don't think Brandon knows that. I reached into my purse and carefully removed Dr. Whitmore's completed report. Jonathan smiled for the first time all morning. No, he doesn't. And that may become the biggest surprise of his life. Just then, Jonathan's office phone rang. His assistant answered. Her face lost all color. She covered the receiver. Jonathan? Yes. Someone from the county courthouse is on the line. What do they want? She swallowed. They're calling about a newly filed emergency guardianship petition against Mrs. Alicia Owens. The room fell silent. No one spoke. No one moved. I stared at Jonathan's assistant as though I had misunderstood her. An emergency? What? She slowly lowered the phone. An emergency guardianship petition. Jonathan took the receiver from her. This is Jonathan Reed. He listened quietly for nearly 2 minutes. I watched his expression grow increasingly serious. Finally, he thanked the caller and hung up. He turned toward me. It has officially begun. I felt strangely calm. Perhaps because I had expected this moment ever since Charles's letter. When the petition was filed this morning. By Brandon. Jonathan nodded. Yes. What does it say? He sat across from me. It claims that over the past 18 months you've experienced progressive memory decline. I almost laughed, not because it was amusing, because I recognized every sentence before he even continued. It says, you've forgotten appointments. I nodded. It says you've repeatedly left your home unsecured. Another nod. It claims you've become suspicious of family members without reason. Exactly as Brandon had told Rebecca at the bank. Jonathan continued. There are sworn statements. From whom? Brandon. He flipped another page. And he hesitated. Natalie. I stared at him. No. He quietly handed me the copies. I recognized Natalie's signature immediately. My hands began shaking. She came to my house last night. I know. She gave me evidence. I know. Then why would she... Jonathan gently interrupted. Read the date. I looked again. The affidavit had been signed 3 weeks earlier. Long before Natalie's visit. Long before she changed her mind. She had once helped Brandon. Now she was trying to undo it. Jonathan pointed toward another page. There are also 2 witness statements from neighbors. I frowned. I barely know my neighbors. Exactly. The statements were vague. Mrs. Owens appears forgetful. Mrs. Owens sometimes repeats herself. Mrs. Owens occasionally seems confused. None of them described actual medical problems, only impressions. Impressions Brandon had carefully created. Jonathan closed the folder. Fortunately, he placed Dr. Whitmore's evaluation beside the petition. We have something much stronger. Independent neurological testing, completed before the hearing, exactly as Jonathan had planned. Still, something bothered me. Why emergency guardianship? Jonathan leaned back. Because emergency petitions move quickly. How quickly? Sometimes within days. And if we hadn't already started preparing... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. By early afternoon, Jonathan had assembled an entire response package. Dr. Whitmore's report, the forged power of attorney documents, Charles's letter, the recordings, financial records, Natalie's evidence. Every page was carefully indexed. As I watched him organize everything, I asked quietly, Do you think Brandon believes he's doing the right thing? Jonathan paused. I think that's the wrong question. What is the right one? Whether he's willing to destroy the truth to get what he wants. I looked at the petition again. Every lie had been written confidently. Every false memory presented as fact. Every accusation designed to make me appear incapable. No, I whispered. He already has. That evening I returned home exhausted. For the first time in days, I considered staying somewhere else. A hotel, Denise's house, anywhere. Instead, I unlocked my own front door. If Brandon wanted my home badly enough to lie in court, I wasn't going to abandon it. As I entered the kitchen, I noticed something unusual. A white envelope lay on the table. I froze. I had locked every door before leaving. Slowly, I approached. No postage, no address, only my name. Alicia. Inside rested a single folded sheet of paper. The message had been typed. Don't trust anyone who suddenly changes sides, especially Natalie. Destroy the recorder before court. It's fake. No signature, no explanation. Just those 2 warnings. I immediately called Jonathan. He answered almost instantly. Did anyone know you were returning home? No. Don't touch anything else. I already opened the envelope. Fine. Wear gloves if possible. I don't have any. Then place both the letter and envelope inside a clean plastic bag. Why, fingerprints. I looked at the paper again. You think Brandon left it? I think someone wants you uncertain. Same difference. Not necessarily. Jonathan's answer surprised me. There are now multiple people involved. Victor? Possibly. Natalie? Possibly. Unknown callers? Possibly. He paused. The more people involved, the less predictable this becomes. The following morning brought another surprise. The forensic examiner called. The tablet is ready. I drove directly to his office. He placed the black tablet on the desk between us. You were wise not to trust it. What did you find? He smiled slightly. 2 completely different histories. I don't understand. He connected the tablet to a monitor. This is what an ordinary user sees. Family photographs, medical reminders, medication schedules, calendar entries describing forgotten appointments, confused journal notes supposedly written by me. Everything painted the picture of an elderly woman gradually losing her memory. I stared in disbelief. I never created any of this. I know. He clicked several commands. Now? This is what was hidden. A second directory appeared, completely concealed. Timestamp logs, editing software, deleted drafts, metadata. He enlarged one report. Every fake journal entry had been created on the same computer. Within only 3 days, not over 2 years. My heart pounded. They manufactured it. He nodded. The dates displayed to users were altered. What about the photographs? Several were edited. He enlarged one image. It appeared to show my stove burner left on. Another window opened. Original version. The burner had actually been turned off. Someone had digitally changed the flame. Another photograph supposedly showing my front door standing open. The original image showed it securely locked. Every piece of evidence had been fabricated. Not just exaggerated. Created. I slowly sat back in my chair. This was never about my memory. No. The examiner looked directly at me. It was about creating documentation. He handed me a printed report. Every alteration, every edit, every timestamp, professionally documented. This will stand in court. As I placed the report into my folder, my phone vibrated. Jonathan. Alicia. His voice sounded unusually urgent. What happened? We've located Victor Hale. My heartbeat accelerated. Where? He requested a meeting. What? He contacted me. Why would he do that? Jonathan spoke carefully. Because he says Brandon has become impossible to control. I nearly dropped the phone. Victor contacted you? Yes. Jonathan's voice remained calm, but I could hear the tension beneath it. He called my office less than 15 minutes ago. What did he say? He asked to meet privately. Did he explain why? No. He only said he has information that could affect the guardianship case. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. Do you believe him? I don't know. Then why meet with him? Jonathan paused. Because people who think they're about to lose often begin protecting themselves. This sentence stayed with me. Protecting themselves. If Brandon's plan was falling apart, perhaps Victor was looking for a way out. An hour later, Jonathan, Denise, Daniel, Brooks, and I sat inside Jonathan's conference room. The meeting had been moved from his office to a larger room. Jonathan wanted witnesses. No one trusted Victor enough to meet alone. At exactly 2 o'clock, the receptionist opened the door. A tall man in his early 60s walked inside. Gray hair. Tailored navy suit, expensive watch, calm eyes that seemed to study everyone before speaking. He wasn't what I expected. He didn't look like a criminal. He looked like a successful businessman. Mr. Hale. Jonathan remained standing. Victor nodded politely. I appreciate your willingness to meet. No one invited him to sit. Finally, Jonathan spoke. Why are you here? Victor looked directly at me. Mrs. Owens, I owe you an apology. I didn't answer. He continued. When Brandon first approached me, I believed he was trying to help his mother. You expect me to believe that? No. I expect you to hear me. Jonathan finally gestured toward a chair. Victor sat. I work as a restructuring consultant. Daniel frowned. I know who you claim to be. Victor ignored the interruption. My clients are usually business owners facing bankruptcy. Like Brandon. Yes. He told me his mother had early dementia. I felt my jaw tighten. He said she refused medical treatment. He said relatives were worried. He said the family wanted to protect her assets before scammers convinced her to sell the house. Jonathan folded his hands. And you believed him? Initially. Victor reached into his briefcase. I shouldn't have. He removed a thick folder. I began asking for documentation. Medical records, financial records, property records. Brandon always had excuses. He promised the evaluations were coming. He said the guardianship attorney was preparing everything. Victor looked at me again. Then he asked me something that changed my opinion. What? He wanted advice on how to make normal forgetfulness appear more serious. The room became silent. Victor continued quietly. I refused. I immediately spoke. Then why does your email tell him to create the appearance of diminished capacity? Victor nodded. I expected you to ask that. He opened another folder. There are 2 versions. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Victor slid both pages across the table. One was the email Natalie had given me. The other looked almost identical, except for one sentence. The original read, objective medical evidence of diminished capacity must come before any transfer discussions. The version Brandon possessed read, the appearance of diminished capacity must come before any transfer discussions. One word, objective, had become appearance. I stared at both pages. He altered your email. Victor nodded. The metadata confirms it. Daniel examined the printed headers. So it does. Jonathan looked thoughtful. Can you prove this? Victor handed him a USB drive. My firm's archived email server. The original message remains intact. Daniel smiled faintly. This can be verified independently. For the first time since Victor entered the room, I believed he might actually be telling the truth. Jonathan leaned forward. Why help us now? Victor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he removed one final document, a termination letter. I ended my relationship with Brandon 6 weeks ago. Why? He asked me to witness statements I knew were false. And when you refused, he threatened to tell people I helped design the entire plan. Victor sighed. I've spent 30 years building my reputation. I'm not sacrificing it for someone else's fraud. He looked directly at me. I should have questioned him sooner. I didn't. For that, I'm sorry. His apology sounded genuine, but Jonathan wasn't finished. You mentioned false statements. Yes. Were there others involved? Victor hesitated. There was another advisor. Who? I don't know his real name. What do you mean? He introduced himself only as Michael. Daniel immediately looked up. Michael. Victor nodded. He specialized in digital evidence. My stomach tightened. The tablet, the fake photographs, the fabricated journal entries. Jonathan spoke quietly. The same person who manipulated the files. Probably, Victor continued. I never met him in person. Only video calls. He handled computers. I handled business restructuring. When I realized Brandon was mixing the two, I left. As the meeting ended, Jonathan asked Victor one final question. Would you testify? Victor didn't hesitate. Yes, if necessary. After he left, none of us spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. I checked something while he was talking. He turned his laptop toward us. The metadata on both emails. He pointed at the screen. The timestamps support Victor's story. So Brandon edited it. Daniel nodded. Very carefully. But not carefully enough. Jonathan smiled. The pattern keeps repeating. What pattern? I asked. Brandon assumes no one will verify anything. The forged signature, the fake journal, the altered photographs, now the edited email. Every deception relied on no one looking too closely. That evening, I returned home feeling cautiously optimistic. For the first time, we weren't simply defending ourselves. We were exposing the truth. As I unlocked the front door, I heard movement inside the kitchen. I immediately stepped back. The lights were off, but someone was there. Before I could react, a familiar voice whispered from the darkness, Grandma, Ethan. He stepped into the moonlight streaming through the window. His backpack was still on his shoulders. His eyes were red from crying. What are you doing here? I rode my bike. Does your father know? He shook his head violently. No. My heart sank. Ethan, I had to tell you. What is it? He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small black notebook. I've found this under Dad's bed. I carefully took it from his hands. It wasn't a notebook. It was a planner. Brandon's planner. Several pages were filled with appointments, loan meetings, court dates, phone numbers, then one entry written in bold black ink caught my attention. Friday, after hearing. House immediately. Locksmith at 3 p.m. Property transfer meeting, 5:30 p.m. I slowly looked back at Ethan. The hearing hasn't even happened yet. He nodded. I know. Dad already said, the house will belong to him by dinner. I stared at Brandon's planner as though the ink might disappear if I blinked. Friday. After hearing. Locksmith at 3 p.m. Property transfer meeting, 5:30 p.m. Every appointment had been written neatly, confidently. Not as possibilities, as certainties. I looked at Ethan. When did you find this? This morning. How? He left it under his bed after packing for work. You took it. The boy lowered his head. I know I shouldn't have. I gently placed my hand on his shoulder. No. You were trying to protect me. Tears welled in his eyes. I don't want our family to hate each other. Neither did I. But Brandon had already chosen a path that made that dream feel impossibly far away. Jonathan asked us to meet immediately. Within an hour, the planner lay open across his conference table. Daniel Brooks photographed every page before anyone touched it again. Jonathan examined the Friday schedule carefully. This is important. Because of the locksmith. Not only that. He pointed to the words property transfer meeting. If Brandon truly believed the court had not yet ruled, he would never schedule this. He'd wait. Exactly. Jonathan looked directly at me. This suggests confidence. Or knowledge. Knowledge of what? Either he believed victory was guaranteed, or someone promised him it would be. Daniel leaned forward. There's another possibility. What? He already arranged buyers or investors. He flipped through the financial documents Natalie had provided. If Brandon expected immediate access to the property, he likely planned to use it as collateral within hours. Not weeks, hours. Everything had been timed with remarkable precision. Jonathan placed the planner into an evidence bag. This may become one of the strongest exhibits. Before Ethan returned home, Jonathan spoke with him privately. Only 15 minutes. When they finished, Jonathan walked back into the room looking thoughtful. He didn't exaggerate. What did he say? I asked. Jonathan sat beside me. He described conversations that matched the recordings. He also described your son rehearsing testimony. I frowned. Rehearsing? Jonathan nodded. According to Ethan, Brandon practiced answering imaginary courtroom questions in front of a mirror. The image broke my heart. My grown son, standing alone, practicing lies. Jonathan continued. He also said Brandon kept repeating one sentence. What sentence? Stay calm, sound concerned, never sound angry. Denise shook her head. So the caring son routine? Jonathan nodded. He understood appearances mattered. That afternoon, Daniel called with another discovery. The planner contains pressure marks. I don't understand. When someone writes on one page, it leaves impressions on the page underneath. Using special lighting, he had recovered writing from pages Brandon had torn out. Most of the recovered notes were incomplete. Meeting V call M. Review affidavit. Destroy drafts. Then, one sentence appeared almost perfectly. If mother fails medical evaluation, proceed immediately. If not, alternative witnesses. I closed my eyes. Alternative witnesses. Even failure had been anticipated. Brandon hadn't built one plan. He had built several. The hearing was scheduled for the following Friday. 4 days away. Jonathan spent nearly every hour preparing. Witness list, evidence index, expert testimony, digital forensic reports, medical evaluation, financial records, Charles's letter, Victor Hale, Rebecca Morales, Natalie. Even Ethan, though Jonathan hoped the court would never require the 11-year-old to testify. He has carried enough already, Jonathan said quietly. I agreed. Wednesday evening brought another surprise. Natalie called. Her voice was shaking. Alicia? What's wrong? He knows. My stomach tightened. Knows what? That I copied documents. How? I don't know. He searched my office. He questioned me. Did you tell him? No. But he doesn't believe me. I heard Ethan crying somewhere in the background. Then Brandon's voice. Loud. Angry. Demanding. Natalie whispered, I have to go. The call ended. I immediately phoned Jonathan. He answered on the first ring. Bring them here. What? If Natalie and Ethan need somewhere safe? They're welcome to stay at my family's guest house. I blinked. You'd do that. This isn't only a legal case anymore. It's a safety issue. I thanked him, then tried calling Natalie again. No answer. Early Thursday morning, my phone rang. This time it was Denise. Alicia, you need to turn on the television. Why, just do it. I switched to the local morning news. A reporter stood outside the county courthouse. Behind her, I saw Brandon, speaking confidently into several microphones. My only concern is my mother's well-being. I felt sick. He looked calm, gentle, heartbroken, the perfect concerned son. The reporter asked, "Are the allegations of financial misconduct true?" Brandon sighed dramatically. "Absolutely not. I love my mother. I've spent years trying to help her. Unfortunately, people experiencing memory problems sometimes become suspicious of those closest to them." Every sentence had been rehearsed, exactly as Ethan described. Denise muttered, "What a performance." The interview continued. Then Brandon said something unexpected. "I hope the court protects her before irreversible financial decisions are made." Jonathan arrived at my house 20 minutes later carrying a laptop. He replayed the interview twice, then smiled. "What?" He made a mistake. "I don't see it. He mentioned financial decisions. So, the petition never mentioned finances publicly." I frowned. He shouldn't have known the court filing included that language. Jonathan nodded. "Exactly." He revealed information available only to the petitioner. Another inconsistency. Another crack in Brandon's carefully constructed image. Thursday afternoon, only one day before the hearing, Daniel rushed into Jonathan's office carrying several printed reports. "I found Michael." Everyone stood. "The digital expert." Daniel nodded. "His real name isn't Michael. What is it? Be Michael Carter. Former forensic technician. Lost his professional certification 3 years ago." "Why?" Daniel placed the report on the table. "Evidence tampering." The room fell silent. Jonathan slowly exhaled. "So, Brandon hired someone previously disciplined for manipulating digital evidence." Daniel nodded. "And," he looked at me, "I know where he lives." Before anyone could respond, Jonathan's office phone rang. His assistant answered. She immediately looked toward us. "Jonathan?" "Yes." "There's a courier downstairs." "What for?" "He says he has a package. Personally addressed to Mrs. Alicia Owens." Jonathan frowned. "Did he say who sent it?" The assistant slowly shook her head. "No. But he said, it must be opened before tomorrow's hearing." No one moved. Jonathan looked at me before speaking. "We're not opening anything until we know where it came from." I nodded. After everything that had happened, I no longer trusted unexpected packages. Jonathan asked his assistant to bring the courier upstairs. A young man in a delivery uniform entered carrying a medium-sized brown envelope. "Mrs. Alicia Owens." "Yes. I was instructed to deliver this directly to you." "Who hired you?" He checked his handheld scanner. "It was paid in cash." "No sender listed." Jonathan stepped forward. "Did the customer leave any message?" The courier hesitated. "Only one." "What was it?" He said, "She deserves to know the truth before court." After the courier left, Jonathan photographed the sealed envelope from every angle. Only then did he carefully open it. Inside were 3 items: a USB flash drive, a stack of printed photographs, a handwritten note. Jonathan unfolded the note first. "Mrs. Owens, I can no longer stay silent. Everything Brandon submitted was prepared months in advance. The photographs prove it. The original files are on the drive. Please forgive me." The note wasn't signed. Daniel immediately examined the USB drive using a secure computer that wasn't connected to the internet. Several folders appeared. Original photos, edited photos, project timeline, invoice. Daniel opened it. Across the top was the name of a small media consulting company. Below it, Digital Image Editing Services. Client Brandon Owens. Amount paid $18,500. Scope of work photo restoration, metadata adjustment, image sequencing, timestamp reconstruction. No one spoke. Daniel opened the next folder. It contained side-by-side comparisons. Every photograph Brandon intended to use in court had an original version beside it. The forgotten groceries photograph, originally taken after I had unloaded every bag except one. The edited version removed the groceries from the kitchen and left only spoiled food in the car. The unlocked front door photograph originally showed my neighbor collecting a package while I stood inside talking to her. The edited version cropped me out entirely. The missed medication picture originally displayed vitamins. The edited version digitally replaced the labels with prescription bottles. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Every image had been designed to tell a story that never happened. Daniel quietly said, "This wasn't casual editing. This was systematic fabrication." Jonathan nodded. "And now we can prove it." He opened the final folder, Project Timeline. It listed every editing session, every revision, every exported file, every delivery date. The oldest timestamp was nearly 11 months ago. 11 months. Brandon had been building this case for almost a year. Jonathan immediately contacted the forensic examiner who had analyzed the tablet. Within 2 hours, the examiner arrived. After comparing the USB files with the tablet contents, he reached only one conclusion. They match perfectly. What does that mean? I asked. The tablet contains copies. The USB contains the production files. He enlarged several technical reports. The editing history is intact. The software logs remain intact. The creator account remains intact. He looked directly at Jonathan. In my professional opinion, these files were intentionally manipulated to create false evidence. Jonathan smiled for the first time that day. This is exactly what we needed. Late that afternoon, Rebecca Morales arrived unexpectedly. She looked relieved. I have good news. What happened? The bank completed its internal investigation. Everyone turned toward her. Rebecca placed another folder on the table. Our security department reviewed every request Brandon ever made. She opened the report. Each archive statement request. Each appointment. Each authorization. Then she slid one page toward Jonathan. Our surveillance footage confirms something important. What? Whenever Brandon visited, he was alone. I frowned. So, Rebecca looked at me kindly. He repeatedly claimed you were with him. My heart skipped. He said I was present. Yes. He told several employees you had forgotten the appointments. He said you preferred waiting in the car. Jonathan immediately circled several dates. Can you prove she wasn't there? Rebecca smiled. Our cameras can. Every visit, every timestamp, every entrance, every exit. Not once had I entered the building. Jonathan looked impressed. This completely destroys his explanation for requesting account information. Rebecca nodded. It also supports your forgery claim. That evening, Natalie finally answered my calls. She sounded exhausted. I'm sorry. Are you safe? For now. And Ethan, he's with me. I heard the boy's voice in the background. He sounded calmer than the day before. Natalie lowered her voice. Brandon packed a suitcase. Where is he going? I don't know. He keeps making phone calls. To Victor? I don't think so. Then who? I only heard one name. What name? Michael. Daniel looked up immediately. The disgraced digital technician. Natalie continued. They argued. About what? I couldn't hear everything. But Brandon kept saying, you promised nobody could trace it. Silence filled Jonathan's office. Daniel quietly wrote the sentence down. Every word mattered now. The evening before the hearing, Jonathan gathered everyone for one final preparation meeting. Around the table sat Jonathan, Daniel, Rebecca, Denise, the forensic examiner, Victor Hale, Natalie, and me. Jonathan stood. Tomorrow isn't about revenge. He looked at each of us. It's about evidence. He pointed toward the organized binders. Medical evidence. Financial evidence. Digital evidence. Witness testimony. Independent experts. Then he looked directly at me. Alicia, tomorrow Brandon will probably appear calm. He may cry. He may say he's only trying to protect you. He may even apologize. But remember one thing. What? We're not asking the court to choose between two stories. He rested his hand on the stack of evidence. We're asking the court to compare one story against the facts. For the first time since Ethan whispered those terrifying words at my birthday party, I felt truly prepared. Not because I wanted to fight my son, because I finally had the truth. As everyone prepared to leave, Jonathan's assistant hurried into the conference room. Jonathan? What is it? The courthouse just emailed. He opened the message. His expression changed instantly. What happened? I asked. He slowly looked up. The judge assigned to tomorrow's hearing has unexpectedly recused herself. Why? A conflict of interest. Who's replacing her? Jonathan read the final line of the email. The case has been reassigned to Judge Eleanor Watkins. Victor Hale suddenly went pale. Jonathan noticed immediately. You know her? Victor swallowed hard. Yes. I testified in one of her fraud trials years ago. Is that good or bad? Victor answered without hesitation. If Brandon intends to lie under oath, he just drew the worst possible judge. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan standing at my birthday party whispering those 6 words that had changed everything. Grandma, don't trust Dad. By dawn, I was already dressed. I chose the same navy blue suit Charles had once told me made me look confident without trying. For the first time in weeks, I looked into the mirror without questioning myself. I wasn't confused, I wasn't helpless, I wasn't losing my mind. Someone had simply spent months trying to convince everyone, including me, that I was. That realization gave me strength. Jonathan met me outside the courthouse. He handed me a bottle of water. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous." "Good." I looked at him surprised. "You should be." He smiled gently. "It means you're taking this seriously." As we walked toward the entrance, television cameras were already waiting. Several reporters recognized Brandon immediately. Microphones surrounded him. "Mr. Owens, is today's hearing about protecting your mother? Do you believe she's safe living alone?" Brandon wore a dark gray suit and a solemn expression. He looked exactly like the devoted son he wanted the world to see. "I love my mother," he told the reporters. "This has never been about money. It's about making sure she's protected." He even managed to sound emotional. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed him myself. Then his eyes met mine across the courthouse steps. For just a second, his smile disappeared. He hadn't expected me to arrive looking calm. He certainly hadn't expected Jonathan walking beside me carrying 6 thick binders of evidence. Inside the courtroom, Judge Eleanor Watkins entered precisely at 9 o'clock. Everyone stood. She was a woman in her late 60s with silver hair, sharp eyes, and a calm, commanding presence. After everyone was seated, she looked over the file. "This matter concerns an emergency guardianship petition filed by Brandon Owens regarding his mother, Alicia Owens." She looked toward Brandon. "Mr. Owens, your attorney may proceed." Brandon's lawyer stood confidently. He spoke for nearly 20 minutes. He described me as increasingly forgetful, vulnerable, unable to manage my finances, at risk of exploitation. He presented photographs, calendar entries, journal pages, affidavits from neighbors, everything we had already seen. The lawyer finished with one sentence. "My client seeks only to protect his mother." Judge Watkins nodded politely. "Thank you." Then she turned toward Jonathan. "Mr. Reed." Jonathan stood. "We asked the court to deny the petition." He paused. "Not because Mrs. Owens opposes help, but because this petition is built upon fabricated evidence." The courtroom became noticeably quieter. Jonathan began methodically. First came Dr. Susan Whitmore. She testified about my neurological evaluation. After reviewing every test, she concluded under oath that I demonstrated no evidence of dementia, cognitive impairment, or inability to manage my own affairs. Brandon's attorney attempted to challenge her conclusions. Dr. Whitmore remained calm. "My evaluation was comprehensive. My conclusions remain unchanged." Judge Watkins made several notes. Next came Rebecca Morales. She explained Brandon's repeated visits to the bank. Then she introduced security records showing I had never accompanied him despite his claims. The surveillance footage was admitted into evidence. Brandon shifted uneasily in his chair. For the first time, his confidence seemed to crack. Then Jonathan called the forensic examiner. He carefully explained the altered photographs, the manipulated metadata, the fabricated digital journal, the hidden files inside the tablet. Side-by-side comparisons appeared on courtroom monitors. Original photograph, edited photograph, original timestamp, altered timestamp. One by one, every digital exhibit presented by Brandon lost credibility. Judge Watkins leaned forward. "Can you state your professional opinion?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Were these files accidentally altered?" "No." "Were they intentionally modified?" "Yes." "To create a false impression?" "Yes." The courtroom remained completely silent. Brandon's attorney requested a brief recess. Judge Watkins denied it. "We will continue." Jonathan then called Daniel Brooks. Daniel carefully walked the court through Brandon's business finances, outstanding loans, default notices, private debts, threatened legal actions. Then he projected one final chart onto the courtroom screen. If Brandon obtained control of Mrs. Owens's home, his largest debts could immediately be refinanced using the property's equity. Judge Watkins looked toward Brandon. "So there was a potential financial benefit?" Daniel answered simply, "Yes." "A very substantial one." Brandon avoided looking at me. Then Jonathan surprised everyone. "Your Honor, the defense calls Victor Hale." A murmur spread through the courtroom. Victor walked calmly to the witness stand. Under oath, he explained his role as a restructuring consultant. Then he identified the altered email. Jonathan displayed both versions, the original, the edited copy. Victor testified that Brandon had changed the wording before using it to support his own plan. Judge Watkins examined both documents carefully. She looked directly at Brandon. "Did you alter this email?" Brandon hesitated. His attorney immediately objected, but the hesitation had already spoken louder than any answer. Finally, Jonathan turned toward me. Mrs. Owens. I took the witness stand. He asked about Charles, our marriage, our home. Then Ethan's whisper at my birthday party, Charles's hidden letter, the secret room, the recordings. I answered every question calmly, truthfully, without anger. Jonathan finished with one final question. Mrs. Owens. Yes. What do you want from this court today? I looked at the judge, then at Brandon. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I don't want revenge. My voice remained steady. I don't even want punishment. I only want the right to live the life my husband and I built together. I paused. And I want my grandson to grow up knowing that the truth still matters. Several people in the gallery lowered their eyes. Even the court reporter briefly stopped typing before continuing. Judge Watkins thanked me. Before she could announce the next witness, the courtroom doors suddenly opened. Everyone turned. A sheriff's deputy entered carrying a sealed evidence envelope. He walked directly to the clerk. The clerk whispered something to the judge. Judge Watkins opened the envelope. She silently read several pages. Her expression changed. She looked toward Jonathan. Mr. Reed. Yes, Your Honor. It appears the court has just received newly authenticated evidence from the State Digital Crimes Laboratory. Jonathan looked genuinely surprised. So have I. Judge Watkins lifted the report. It concerns Mr. Brandon Owens' communications with Michael Carter. Brandon's face instantly lost all color. The courtroom became so quiet that I could hear the faint hum of the overhead lights. Judge Watkins read the first page of the newly delivered report without speaking. Then she looked directly at Brandon. Mr. Owens, stand, please. He rose slowly. His attorney whispered something urgently, but Brandon barely seemed to hear him. Judge Watkins held up the report. The State Digital Crimes Laboratory completed an expedited forensic analysis of electronic communications recovered during an unrelated investigation. She paused. The report was transmitted to this court less than 30 minutes ago. No one moved. No one spoke. Judge Watkins continued. It confirms that multiple emails, digital photographs, and electronic journal entries submitted with this petition were intentionally manipulated. She looked toward the forensic examiner who had testified earlier. The laboratory's findings independently support the conclusions already presented in this courtroom. My heart pounded. Everything Jonathan had prepared, everything Charles had feared, everything Ethan had risked, it had all led to this moment. Brandon's attorney slowly stood. Your Honor, I request additional time to review. Judge Watkins gently raised her hand. Denied. The authenticity of these communications has already been independently verified by 2 separate forensic examinations. She turned another page. The report also identifies direct communications between Mr. Brandon Owens and Michael Carter regarding the creation of false digital evidence. Brandon closed his eyes. For the first time since the hearing began, he looked frightened. Not nervous. Frightened. Judge Watkins addressed him directly. Mr. Owens, did you knowingly submit altered evidence to this court? His attorney immediately whispered, Do not answer. Brandon swallowed. Then almost inaudibly he said, Yes. A gasp spread through the courtroom. I didn't react. I simply watched my son, the little boy I had once taught to ride a bicycle. The teenager whose college graduation had made me cry. The grown man who had just admitted under oath that he had lied to a judge. Judge Watkins remained composed. Were you aware that submitting fabricated evidence constitutes fraud upon the court? Yes. Were the photographs altered at your direction? Yes. The electronic journal? Yes. The edited email? Brandon lowered his head. Yes. His attorney quietly sat down. There was nothing left to argue. Judge Watkins removed her glasses and looked around the courtroom. This court exists to protect vulnerable adults. She spoke slowly and clearly. It cannot fulfill that responsibility if parties intentionally manufacture vulnerability where none exists. She looked toward me. The medical evidence establishes that Mrs. Alicia Owens possesses full decision-making capacity. She looked toward Jonathan. The financial evidence establishes a substantial personal incentive for the petitioner. She looked toward the forensic reports. The digital evidence establishes deliberate fabrication. Finally, she looked back at Brandon. And the petitioner's own testimony confirms intentional deception. She closed the case file. The emergency guardianship petition is denied. A wave of relief washed over me, but Judge Watkins wasn't finished. I further order that today's record, including all forensic findings and admitted exhibits, be referred to the appropriate investigative authorities for review of potential criminal conduct. Brandon's shoulders slumped. He looked years older than he had that morning. Judge Watkins continued, Mrs. Owens shall retain full authority over her person, finances, and property. Then she added one final sentence that I will never forget. The court's duty is not merely to protect older adults from strangers. It is also to protect them from exploitation within their own families. The gavel came down. This matter is concluded. Outside the courtroom, reporters rushed toward Jonathan. He politely declined to comment. This is a family matter. Daniel quietly packed away the evidence binders. Rebecca hugged me. I'm so glad you came to the bank. So am I. Victor Hale approached cautiously. I know an apology isn't enough. No, it isn't. But thank you for telling the truth. He nodded once. I should have done it sooner. Then he walked away without another word. I never saw him again. Brandon remained inside the courtroom for nearly 20 minutes after everyone else had left. When he finally stepped into the hallway, we found ourselves standing only a few feet apart. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he whispered, I'm sorry. I believed that he regretted what had happened, whether he regretted hurting me or regretted getting caught. Only he truly knew. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. You shouldn't. His eyes filled with tears. I've lost everything. I looked at him quietly. No. You lost your integrity long before today. Silence settled between us. I hope someday, I continued, you become the kind of father Ethan already believes you can be. He lowered his head. I walked away before he could answer. Natalie and Ethan were waiting outside. The moment Ethan saw me, he ran across the courthouse lawn and wrapped his arms around me. We won. I smiled through tears. No, we didn't win. The truth did. He looked confused for a moment. Then he smiled. I like that better. Natalie embraced me next. I'll cooperate with every investigation. I know. I'm filing for divorce. I wasn't surprised. I hope Brandon gets help. So do I. Because despite everything, he was still my son. And somewhere beneath the lies, the fear and the desperation, I hoped the boy I had raised still existed. Several months later, life felt peaceful again. Jonathan helped me update every legal document. A new will, new financial safeguards, multiple trusted contacts, independent oversight for major transactions. Rebecca arranged additional security measures on my bank accounts. Daniel ensured every important record had secure backups. The hidden room beneath Charles's study remained exactly where it had always been. But now I understood why Charles had built it. Not to hide secrets, to preserve the truth. One autumn afternoon, Ethan helped me plant flowers beside Charles's favorite oak tree. As we finished, he looked up at me. Grandma. Yes. Do you remember what I whispered at your birthday party? I smiled gently. I'll remember it for the rest of my life. He squeezed my hand. I'm glad you listened. So am I. We stood quietly beneath the tree as the afternoon breeze carried away the last fallen leaves. For the first time in a very long while, home truly felt like home again. Growing older should never mean surrendering your voice, your dignity, or your independence. One of the greatest lessons in life is that trust is precious, but trust should never replace wisdom. The people closest to us are often the ones we love without question, yet love does not mean ignoring warning signs. Healthy relationships are built on honesty, respect, and transparency, not control, fear, or manipulation. This story reminds us that courage doesn't always look like raising your voice or fighting back. Sometimes courage is quietly collecting the truth, asking difficult questions, seeking professional help, and refusing to let others define your reality. Even when Alicia began doubting herself, the truth never changed. Facts remained facts. Documents remained documents. Integrity remained stronger than deception. In the end, it wasn't anger that protected her. It was patience, preparation, and the courage to believe in herself again. Another powerful lesson comes from Ethan. No matter how young someone may be, their honesty can carry incredible wisdom. We should never dismiss a sincere voice simply because it comes from a child. Sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the one brave enough to speak the truth that everyone else is afraid to say. And perhaps the most important lesson of all is this: growing older does not make you less valuable. Your life experience, your memories, your achievements, and the home you've built are part of your legacy. No one has the right to take away your independence through lies or manipulation. If something feels wrong, trust your instincts. Ask questions. Keep records. Seek trusted advice. There is no shame in protecting yourself. In fact, protecting yourself is one of the greatest acts of self-respect. If this story touched your heart, I'd truly love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a time when someone underestimated you, tried to manipulate you, or made you question yourself? How did you overcome it? Please share your thoughts in the comments. Your story may encourage someone else who needs hope today. And if you enjoy heartfelt stories about family resilience, justice, and the strength to stand up for yourself, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next inspiring story. Thank you for spending your time with us today, and remember, the truth may take time to be heard, but when it finally speaks, it has the power to change everything.